Hi, this is Steve Farnsworth, and this is the B2B Marketing Show by Impress Labs. Today, we're going to talk with Dayle Hall. He is the VP of Marketing for Lithium Technology, a digital experience management platform. And welcome very much for joining us today, Dayle.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
You know, Lithium does something that's pretty fascinating for people who've never or haven't heard you guys. You work with major companies, helping building this platform for engagement with their their fan bases. Can you talk a little bit what you guys do, just briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lithium Technologies has been around for 6 or 7 years. Came from a gaming background. Gamers.com was the original founders, where the founders came from, and they kind of identified that this whole idea of gamification and what online gamers wanted to talk and share could actually be applied to the business world, and Lithium was born. And over the last few years, what we've tried to do is really take the whole the growth of digital technologies and really say, you as a company need to focus heavily on the digital customer experience of everyone out there. And what we do as a platform is we try and give you the tools, the processes, the people and the services, and help you really connect with customers, with superfans, with prospects. And once you've connected and identified who they are, you bring them back to a on-domain kind of property, something like a community or through your website, and that's where you engage them. So you get to create and own that branded experience. And then once you've connected with them, you've engaged them, and then really take that behavior, take the questions, the answers, the ideas, everything that's coming from what these people are talking about, and really pull that back into your business to create better products, better services, and actually give the customers what they're actually looking for. But you use the data that you're generating on your own platform to actually go back and create new offers and give the customers exactly what they want, which is, at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do, right?
I'm curious, one of the things that's fascinating about your product is how it allows marketers to, there's a lot of talk about engaging your users after the fact, but there's not a lot of cohesive way, and that's why I think your product's been, some people have really come to it and embraced lithium technology. And so as you kind of have that experience of watching how that, as you with your process, how's your marketing philosophy changed? And what is your marketing philosophy?
Well, I think, for me, when I think when you're a bigger company, when you first start out, when I first started out, it was really about trying to get the right product messaging, making sure that you're at least saying the right things, but we didn't have to worry too much around things like awareness, because I work for Cisco, I work for Oracle, for IBM, and those are all very well-known companies. But I think as I've progressed to different roles, and I think with the advent of a lot of these digital technologies, I feel like at Lithium and in my own career, it's gone beyond the right product messaging, and it's really important now to focus on not just the right product message, but is that message tailored to the right channel, and is it reaching the right audience? And Lithium's philosophy for our product is to really identify who those people are, get them on the right channel, bring them to somewhere you own. But I think that's how my own marketing philosophy has changed over the years, because I feel like a lot of people out there that do marketing now, they talk about, you have to tailor the message for the channel. I feel like people say it, but I think if you actually went and looked at whether people do change and tailor the message, I think the answer would be no. I think you'd see a very similar message across a social channel, across a website, potentially on an event stage. And one of the things that at Lithium and the marketing team and within my team we try and do is, it doesn't matter if you have to rewrite most of it. If the core product message is still the same, you make it 30 words or less, or you make it more product detail if it's going into a technical part of the community. And I think that's something that we try and instill at Lithium, and I've done in my own career. But I would say a lot of marketers are still finding that more difficult. And I think it's because they have so many things that they have to try and get done. You look at any integrated campaign, any launch plan these days, there are so many channels they have to hit with a message. It's really hard to create that uniqueness across each.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, Lithium has always been a digital company. And so it hasn't had necessarily like some older technologies, like maybe a semi company or other companies. Yeah. So it's kind of come with that awareness of digital. But could you talk about how you think Lithium specifically, or marketing more largely, how digital is impacting the marketing departments? How marketing departments needing to change to meet that? How are brands dealing with that? What's the consequence?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of positive consequences, and I feel like we have technologies and tools and channels now that we can actually get more granular in the things that we do. And I know I'm being held more accountable now than I've ever been held accountable to specific ROI for my programs, for the campaigns, not just for my team, but also for Lithium in general. I read one of the Harvard Business Review articles that just came out, was talking about the power or the challenge of the CMO. And part of the study said that in newer companies and smaller companies that have just grown up in this digital era, if you've got a CMO and they put marketing and performance marketing in the midst of the strategic planning, that those companies are being exponentially more successful. But you have to have that performance-driven mentality. And I think that's something that you can switch to that. You may have not grown up in the digital era, but the digital tools that are out there right now give you so much data and so much access to information that if you can get your head around that and you can start to drive some real insights from it, I think the power of that data for any marketing organization, whether it's been around 20 years or whether it's been around 2 years, it could really drive your company forward in a way that I know we didn't have access to that when I started 20 years ago, when I first came out of college, and I worked for a very big GE company. We didn't even have access to that. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I see is that you still have to grow up. The company still has to allow you to try these technologies. Potentially, they may not all work the way you intended, but it's almost like you have to have the remit to be able to try and fail, because there's so many of these technologies around them.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about performance, you're really talking about looking at the data, throwing out preconceived notions. Let's test. Yeah. Let's not argue about which way is the right way. Let's test 4 different ways and see what really performs. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could be, there could be 4 different ways of testing display. There's 8 different ways of testing account-based marketing. So, and that's the challenge from my position, is there's so many levers and dials and knobs and all these things that you can tweak, that trying to get that right balance, that right mix is challenging. And I feel like every day it's a challenge.
So I'm kind of actually, I'd be curious for you to talk about that a little bit, because like when for a company that is just starting to get more into data, who are just starting to really understand website analytics and usability and heat maps and those kinds of things, which is super basic. Yeah. It's easy to say, well, start small. It may be overwhelming, but start someplace and then iterate, and that's a way to start. But what is your day like? I mean, if you have all those places, that's clearly too much for you just to manage. So how do you kind of prioritize, or how do you organize that in your head so you can manage something that complicated?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key things, and this is a challenge and an opportunity, I think, for our industry, for the digital marketing industry over the next 3 to 5 years, is you have to find the right expertise, whether it's a vendor, whether it's someone internal. You have to find the right expertise to be able to say, help me put two and two together. You know, 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, so help me put Marketo with my CRM tool, and then help me put the CRM tool with Domo, and then help me put Domo with Google Analytics. So I think it's, you know, a typical day for me is to potentially look at certain campaigns and certain performance, but then potentially go back and look at how we've integrated all these marketing technologies and test performance of assets or campaigns all the way back, you know, potentially 6 to 9 months. If it's a long sales cycle, you go back and you look at the data and you see certain assets, certain channels, how they're performing based on how they're integrating with all these BI tools or your community tools. What are the customers engaging with? Is your asset out on PPC converting to any qualified sales opportunities? I feel like I'm not a data scientist. We have a guy here called Dr. Wu. I don't know if you.
I know Michael. He's awesome.
Right. So every time I talk to Dr. Wu, I feel like I'm stupid, because he's on a totally different plane in terms of looking at how to really get the most out of data. But I feel like I'm going more towards that side of being more involved in the data and trying to use my experience to interpret the data. And then what my team are really good at is actually hooking those reports together and giving me that insight. And then my job is to really, with them, is to try and make some interpretations and make some bets. So I think that's probably what I spend a lot of time doing is interpreting.
So let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. So I heard a combination of trying to kind of cluster together what the sections are, finding the right people to manage that section of activities, including bringing in outside talent as needed, and then having them help identify the key data that they give to you so you understand how it's working. Is that?
Yeah. And then the key thing is clearly once you've got that data, once you've tried to draw out some of the insights, what do you do with it? So what I would then do is go back to, you know, people that create content and say, we see that this type of content on a webinar helps to convert people lower down in the funnel. So then we go to the content team and our experts and say, okay, we need this type of content, and we need you to come on a webinar, and we're going to go after this part of our installed base or our prospects, because we feel like they've done enough actions that they might move further down the funnel. You know, I think when I got into marketing, I always liked that creative aspect. I like the brand, I like the style, I like that element of marketing. But I would say that's my day-to-day has changed over the last 3 to 4 years, and that I spend a lot of time doing those insights and recommendations.
I think that everybody is going to be looking at that moving forward. You know, I'd love to get your take. You know, we're talking about data. What, you know, in your mind, what's the current state of big data as it relates to use in marketing?
Well, I think it's, as I said, we're using a lot more. I think it's definitely something that when we talk to our customers, the people that are interested in using Lithium's products, they're doing that because of the data that we have access to, because of, I mean, you know that we have clout, so that's millions and millions of profiles and activity, and they're looking to get that kind of social web behavior and link that to people that are on their own community, and then potentially, you know, get that insight on what it is that their customers are doing. So, right, I think we're seeing that more and more to drive behavior, but I still feel like to some extent we're only scratching the surface once you go out and look at things like, you know, what's going on with display, with PPC, with account-based marketing. There are multiple tools, and there are multiple areas to pull in data. And again, the challenge is integration. But also the challenge is there's a new tool every 3 months that someone in my marketing ops will come to me and say, hey, we want to do this tool because it shows us an attribution of this asset on this deal, and it's useful stuff, but you can't invest in everything. You could, but looking at that data in a silo is just causing you more problems. So unless you can link these big data sources together, I think you could actually create more of a challenge for your organization than actually solving issues by being able to string that together and get a better picture of how your customers engage.
I think that those are wise words. I remember one time meeting a senior brand person at Cisco a number of years ago and asked them, I said, given all the messages and groups you have, how do you pick which messages to focus on and which venues to use that message? She goes, all of them. And I thought, it was just so scary for me. I thought that then you're doing none of it well if you're doing all of it.
Yeah.
Let's actually kind of break it down a little bit. Let's go back to talking about the data. So, collecting the data is easy. The drawing on insight is hard. So can you talk about maybe the guide when you sit down with the group, you brought your group together for one section of the marketing activities, you have the expert stuff. What does the conversation look like when you start kind of, if you have any concrete examples, is great, or higher level ways that you approach it? What is your process to help guide them to give you the right data and get the right data back to you?
Yeah. Well, I think that as we mentioned previously, I think what we initially start with is you start looking at one simple source. It could be an asset, one type of campaign, or it could be a channel. And then I think you have to try and go back as far as you can to get the performance of whatever it is, a channel, an asset, or whatever. So we start with that. We start with the basics. So it could be something like Google, like our last 3 to 6 months from Google Analytics, how our PPC is doing, for example. And on the face of it, some of that may seem like things are not being successful because you may be getting a lot of names at the top of the funnel, but they're not going all the way down the funnel. But what you have to do at that point then is to really say, okay, so this is one lens, this is one channel, one lens. What else do we need to look at? So then you look at potential, if you customers or prospects that are moving through the funnel, and what are they looking at? What are they seeing? What are they downloading? And as you add some data from your own, from a different tool, and you pull that in, and you cross-reference and really link it, what you might see is that, well, actually, in the last 3 months, you're not getting some asset that you put out is not necessarily converting to sales leads, but some of the later funnel activities, they're actually going back and downloading another asset from PPC. So you may not be getting as many net new sales leads as you're thinking, but you're actually doing more conversion. So I think it's the lenses. It's trying to identify what all those lenses are that you kind of move in and out. Remember the movie National Treasure with Nick Cage?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had those glasses. He was looking at the Declaration of Independence. That's what I feel like we do on a daily basis. Is it the CRM lens? Is it the BI lens? Is it the Google Analytics lens? And I think it can be it can be scary sometimes after going to your boss and say, hey, some of the stuff we put out over the last 3 months, nothing's converted to a sales opportunity. That's a hard conversation to have. Now, it doesn't tell the entire story, and that's why the integration, the drawing the insights. But I feel like the other thing that I have to be really good at these days is making sure that I can craft a story, pulling all those lenses together, because otherwise I don't think you get a realistic view of what was going on. And I think it's too easy for potentially certain other parts of your organization to say, well, look, you spent this much money on this, it didn't convert to anything, that means it's unsuccessful. When in reality, that's not true. But again, you've got to be a good storyteller at the same time and pull these lenses together.
Well, I think one of the misconceptions about data, people get really scared about data and putting a stake in the ground. But sometimes, you have to test, you have to try things out and see if they work. The old days, the only difference between now and the old days is we didn't know if they really worked or not. We kind of asked, Morty over in sales, like, how you getting leads? Yeah, we're getting leads. And there was really no meaningful feedback, or the CEO would come in and say, you know, my neighbor's wife just told me she saw our ad someplace, so it's working.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
I get, you know, I mean, I love our sales teams. I'll say that now in case any of them ever watch this. But if I get any questions, if I have one more of them ask me, like when I go on Google and I search for something, how come I see our competitors and I don't see your ads come up? It makes me want to tear my hair out because again, there is no, it's the lenses, right? There is no simple answer to say, well, it's because of this. I can tell them 5 different reasons why they may or may not get it. But I feel like every day in this role is just moving you down the experience curve. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that's one of the things that we will need to see and hopefully see continued growth, not just in the tools, but in expertise in these tools and in bringing these people together, people that have experience of the integration and the insights. Because, you know, with a new tool every 2 weeks, we're going to need that. We're going to need that expertise and that growth.
Well, let's dial down on that a little bit. I mean, if you kind of look forward, I always think that the Bay Area has some really incredible marketers, and I think that we at least as good as anybody else in the country. I am biased, but you know, it's like that's reality. So, but you know, when you look at a senior marketing role like you're in, and you look forward 3 to 5 years, what do you think that your peers need to start looking at more hard than they are looking at now, kind of more generically?
Yeah. Well, I would say that, so I had an agency, and recently we were talking about doing some digital work together, helping on some marketing technology. And they actually, one of the guys actually said, we're moving to a time where you're going to have to figure out who your audience is without asking them to fill in a form. Because we're all getting to the point where you don't want to fill that in. You don't want to fill in that form because you know you're going to get emailed, or they're going to get, you're going to get contact. So as a marketer, I feel like it's up to us to try and give that person something they need without us necessarily always having to know who they are. And I think there's this link of a personalized experience with account-based marketing. And that's something that we're focused on right now, is how do you really target the accounts you want to, but then give them a unique, compelling experience that they feel like it's targeted for them, that they feel like you know who I am without getting all creepy about it, without getting like, you know everywhere I've been on the internet. Like, I don't want that. But I want, you should know something about me, and I want you to serve something up to me that I'm going to be interested in. Because I think it's getting harder and harder for us to throw an asset at someone, get them to fill in their names, and actually convert that to a lead. So, you know, I think for the next 3 to 5 years, I think that's where, you know, we can leverage certain tools. We can look at what we offer, the personalization, that tailored message we talked about earlier, and make sure that we're giving that person that maybe visits your web, or maybe out on Twitter making a comment, or even maybe browsing your community. I mean, how do you make sure that you're giving them the right content, the right place at the right time?
Well, and you guys have an interesting challenge. Yeah, in the sense that you work with really large clients. Can you mention any? I know some of them, but can you mention any of them?
Any of our clients?
Yeah, some of the large ones.
Yeah. So like Sephora, for example. Sephora, great brand, doing some great things around their specific community product, where they created their community called Beauty Talk, and it's where people go and share ideas, best practices with makeup and lipstick. Well, not that I know anything about that.
So like trying to get accounts that are that size, I mean, it's not just you're looking for one name, or usually it's going to be a number of different people who may be reaching out to you. And you talked about not always be able to put a name with an inquiry. and the ability to
Yeah,
have to serve them. And so, I mean, I got to believe that that's an interesting challenge for you
it
as
is.
a marketer.
It is because, and as I said, I think that the personalization and the account-based marketing, even if you don't get all the way down to a company name, but if you go to like a certain, type of retailer, online retailer or something like that, is you have to do those things together. So you can't just blast, if you get 5 or 10 names, you can't just blast them with emails and expect them to convert, but they will keep coming back to your site. And the more, I mean, we have some examples where we have 20 or 30 different people from one organization all hitting the website. Now we know who they are because that's what the tools of the website tell us. Well, we know where they're coming from, but that's a huge opportunity. And the way we look at it, and the way I think a lot of people should look at it, is every one of those 30 or 40 or 50 people could have an influence on a sale that you may get from them one day, right? You may not get that CMO, you may not get the CIO or CEO, whoever, you might not get the e-staff person you want to make that decision to buy a community in 2 months, but they have people that work for them that are looking at you as a potential solution, your products as a solution. So it's important that we give them just as good an experience as if the CMO can.
When you look at forward-thinking marketers, and so I'm almost surprised when people are slow to learn and adapt. I mean, but when you look at forward-thinking marketers, what do you think their biggest, their main stumbling block is?
Well, I think I think this notion of there's always a new tool to assess, and I think it's, even though you can be forward thinking and trying those and trying new tools as they come out, and some of them are useful, I think that whole notion of making, if you've got other tools that you haven't integrated yet, and you're not getting a holistic picture of what you've currently got already, adding another tool doesn't help you. So I think we can get distracted. I think we can get kind of like the shiny penny, like look at that new tool over there and what could that do for me? Because I think, I mean, you've probably heard this as well. I believe marketing is art and science, right? So there's the science of what a tool can give you, the data it can, but then knowing that you can actually integrate it and make it all work together is, you've got to take some bets. And I wonder how many digital marketing people, even though they're forward thinking, you have to be in that environment where your boss, your organization gives you the opportunity to try these things, and sometimes they don't work. But I think that whole element of integration and making sure that you can not just see that new tool and say, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could get that data? Yeah, but again, standalone, I don't know how powerful, I don't know what actual insights it would give you if you just shut the other lenses to one side and said, this is all I'm looking for. And there's 10 tools that do the same thing these days. So how do you make that decision?
So I'm curious, one of the things that is always a little frustrating is, for me, is I look at, you see a range of marketers, and it seems like there are companies like Lithium Technology, which I think is a really cutting edge marketing group. And I actually should have mentioned at the top of the show, Lithium is actually a client of Impress Labs, so we have a professional relationship, and I actually have known Lithium for quite a while and know Katie Kime, the CMO over there. But I think the world of what you guys do. And so, but when I look at other marketers, there are a lot of people, even including in the Bay Area and other places, which really seem hell-bent on sticking to some really old notions. And so if you were to look kind of at what you know of that, and you could change one thing that everybody would all of a sudden get and start using, what would that be?
You mean a tool, or?
I was thinking more of a process or a methodology or an insight to what they're doing. Because I see, small things. I know that people, like, one of the things that's nice now is working with a client where they go, well, let's pick a headline and topic for this thing. And I said, no, let's not. Let's pick 4. and
Yeah.
test it. We don't need to pick one. We can test this with a little bit of extra energy. So to me, testing would be something I would want everybody to do, an experimentation.
Yeah. So I think I would probably say, and this is going to sound like a no-brainer, but I'll explain it in a second. I think by putting the what marketing does and the customer touch points at the center of the business, I think that's something that I think a lot of other companies could do. Now, saying I'll put the customer at the center of the business, I think a lot of people talk about that, but I think what they don't recognize is that a lot of areas of the business now, there's a touch point with the customer. And marketing is one of the few areas that has the ability to create things to connect the customer experience no matter who they touch. So as the conversions of the service organization with the marketing organization by leveraging something like a community tool. That's a way that by allowing marketing to think about the customer journey at the center of the organization, you can actually have a bigger impact on support through what the marketing team is doing than just saying, hey, service, you have to, you have to have better call deflection or reduce the number of calls. Marketing can help drive that. So, I mean, that's probably a scary proposition. And I'm sure that, some people would think that, well, marketing is they're never going to be that center of the business. But as I said, we have access to tools now. We have access to, we know the processes of how to link this customer journey together. So, so one of the reasons that I like being at Lithium is because we talk about this thing, which is total community, right? So that's what we talk about now. And the whole concept, I think, is something everyone should be focused on. Your total community is, it is customers, and it is your own employees and experts, but it's also prospects. It's also influencers. It could be anyone, and you have to have that mentality of how do we touch these people at different points of their journey, and it's constant. It is constant, and there's things that you can do to make sure that you're at the center of that, and you know what your customer or prospect or the employees, how they're having those conversations, what they're saying. And we see it with our own customers that if you can actually harness those conversations, it can drive the business. I'll give you one example from the company I used to work with. So I built their community strategy. Great company called Aruba Networks, now actually purchased by HP. But I built out their community strategy with the rest of the marketing team, and we built that as a marketing platform. But what happened was people would, technical, Wi-Fi experts would come on there and talk about the things that the product didn't do, which was good because then it gave us ideas of what we needed to fix, what we needed to add. And ultimately, extrapolate that 6 months forward, Aruba made an acquisition of a company with technology that fulfilled what the community was saying that they were falling short on. So by watching those conversations, by this marketing community and watching the conversations, it drove the business development strategy, and Aruba made an acquisition of a company that then rounded out more of the portfolio. That's pretty powerful. But that's just one of those examples that you can say, by having someone at the center that thinks differently about the digital customer experience, I think companies can really use that and drive their brand and their business forward.
With so many moving pieces to Lithium's marketing activities, when you kind of look forward, what are some of your long and short-term goals for digital marketing to help the company grow?
Yeah, well, I talk about all this, using these lenses and channels like we're experts at it, and I would have to say we're still learning on that too. So one of my goals is to really look at a lot of the channels and the assets that we've got, and really get very granular of which channels and assets are converting people quicker through the funnel. So short term, I have certain goals on top of funnel suspects, how they go all the way through to sales opportunities. And I got to tell you, as a marketing person, to be held accountable to impact some of those sales goals is kind of scary. But I feel like we are truly like that at Lithium, the sales and marketing team. So I have very specific goals on making sure that the assets that we have and the channels are performing to move things through the funnel. So I think that's my short-term goal, and then long-term is to make sure that we have this personalization strategy for our digital channel. So it's as we invest more in certain account-based marketing tools and topics, it's to make sure that I'm doing everything I can, and my team is doing everything they can, that they have that right experience, the best experience they can have, that they feel like they are they're known enough by us that they will be quickly served up a very simple, very clear message that's relevant to them, that they may actually choose to either engage with us in one way or another. They may hang out and give us their name if they download an asset. They may visit 10 other pages. Maybe they would have only visited 2 and bounced, but now they're going to stay and find out a bit more. And all that's relevant to me. So page views is still relevant. Uniques is still relevant. Those web tangible metrics, they're also relevant as much as, going from a top of funnel suspect to a marketing qualified lead, because they all lead to the same thing.
One of the things that I think that you said it's really worth touching on. I was talking recently with a CMO from a $1 billion plus company, and he confided in me that because of their structure, that they didn't really know which of the leads they generated closed, and it had to do with not with him but with the management structure. And I would say, sadly, that really is not an unusual thing. So when you're talking about being not experts but still being in the church just learning, I think anybody who's really looking at the technologies, who's really trying to grow, they're in the same place. They're students also, and that's what part of being a good marketer nowadays, I think, is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I found that I said I work for Cisco, I work for Oracle and Aruba, and I don't see anyone that really has this. No one has it down, that they have all the technology that they're using. It's all integrated. There's attribution through the funnel. They know what converts, what doesn't. But we're getting better. We're getting better, and people get more experience. And I think, you mentioned around talent in the Bay Area, and I think there is a lot of talent. And I remember when I was at Aruba, and part of our goal was to drive new to help people get access to the right technology at the right time for Wi-Fi. I think there's an opportunity to do that in digital marketing, and I think each of these companies, Lithium does some of it. There's other companies like Marketo, and other vendors that are trying to build up their own areas of expertise. But one of the things I appreciate about these kind of hangouts is it brings people like me, digital marketers, together to keep learning, because Lord knows I don't know the answer to everything. I have a smart team and they help. I have a smart CMO and she helps, but it takes a village. It takes a village to make this successful, and I think I feel sorry for that CMO. I hope he has a strong team under him that are trying to help him figure it out.
Yeah, he's got a great team. It was actually the other senior managers, which was pretty funny. Yeah. Dayle, if someone wants to connect with you in the social digital world, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's the spelling of my name is slightly different to any other Dayles or many other Dayles. It's Dayle. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and then I would say I'm on Twitter sporadically. I'm too busy in the data to actually be posting too much on Twitter. But
is Dayle Hall your Twitter handle?
It's not. It's somewhat embarrassing, but I can't bring myself to change it. It's actually Marina, and it's Dazza, Dazza. It's a long story that I won't go into right now. Yeah.
Dale, I know you're super busy, and I really appreciate you taking time to have a chat with me today.
I appreciate it. It was good to catch up, and hopefully I'll get to watch more of these with you and some of those other digital marketers, and I get to learn from them too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.